The Democrats and the media are realizing Biden can't be rehabbed, so Trump needs to be neutralized. No one's buying their hoaxes anymore. The indictments only reinforce Trump's connection with voters, so the media has an additional strategy: shame. Make regular Americans ashamed to associate with them. They'll make Trump into a racist, Russian-loving rapist with a rap sheet and say, "You're not going to ruin your reputation by aligning with that guy, are you?"
It's time for another good idea, bad idea. Good idea.
If he's going to be shameless, which is his greatest asset, the shamelessness of him, is then Biden has to get in there very hard and go rapist, racist, fascist, over and over and over again. Hammer it in with those three things: rapist, racist, fascist.
Bad idea.
Look over here.
It's what high school girls do, and it can only work if the others are weak. I thought that was the most disrespectful part of the whole night.
Well, you know, Jessica, the amazing thing is they put up all this fencing, right, around Congress, but Joe Biden is delayed because they've got all these Hamas protesters. It's like they don't even know where the problems are going to be. But it's true. I mean, you have to admit he was amped up, jacked up. They expected the speech to be an hour and a half. It was like 58 minutes because he spoke so fast you couldn't keep him so hyped. What was your take?
The Affordable Care Act is a con. In reality, it's unaffordable, callous, and cruel. Our country's equivalent to the Hunger Games tributes will be the patients who die under this law.
Housekeeping still remains the most important business of the world. It engages the hearts and minds of more people and calls for higher qualities than any other occupation.
We stand with you.
Thanks.
Unbelievable. Oh, hi. Sorry. I want to talk about all of Trump's crazy-ass bitches. This is Videos After Dark.
President Biden said he is focused on bringing down the costs for prescription drugs after seeing firsthand just how badly they're needed.
Let's give teachers a raise. Let's make sure that
We'll go through that.
Yep, we will. Let's make sure that kids know how to read by 3rd grade. Seems really good.
For that.
It doesn't, but it's still, well, first of all, it's not Joe Biden that's at fault for that. Kids were falling behind. Listen, I've been plenty critical of Randy Weingarten, but it's still something that Americans want, that they want our public schools to serve kids in a good way, lifting kids out of poverty. The Republicans got rid of the child tax credit. That was something that eliminated poverty by huge amounts. Those are unifying issues for the American public, and that's why it is getting so much praise.
Okay.
Response to the State of the Union address, which has gotten a lot of headlines. One of the fans was former President Trump. He loved it. He said it was compassionate and caring. But you've had a lot of critics out there, and I want to talk about specifically one anecdote that I've heard you tell before. It is a horrific story of a sex trafficking survivor. Nobody is questioning that the story happened, that she is actually who she is, says she is, and that this happened. The question is about the timing and the implication of you telling the story. The New York Times has this. Right. None of this happened during President Biden's administration, but that didn't stop the first-term senator from strongly implying that the president could have somehow prevented it from happening, using rhetoric that seemed calibrated to inflame public fears about immigration.
Those are all scenes from her one-woman show, A Brit Much. It's the play critics are calling Is She Okay?
Republicans had an opportunity here to put their best foot forward and just sound normal. That's it. Don't shout, say normal things, and speak to regular Americans about what's real. And they blew it, as they do almost all the time.
Alabama Senator Katie Britt represents what's wrong with the Republican Party. The supposed rising Republican star was given a chance to deliver a powerful and fiery rebuttal to Biden's State of the Union address, but instead delivered a somewhat, phony, maybe out of touch speech.
Mitt Romney yesterday defended Alabama Senator Katie Britt's response to the State of the Union and said that the media overreaction to it, quote, tells us who liberals most fear. I'm not sure about liberals, but I'll bet managers are terrified.
In species, when female bears give birth and are nursing their cubs, they cannot go into heat. But, and this is what the papa bears have worked out, if a nursing mother loses her cubs, the lactation will stop and she will once again become receptive to breeding. So male bears kill their cubs for sex, really, is what it comes down to. Lately, I've been left wondering what our human world might look like if we all drew inspiration from such a notion, a world where even seeing a child signaled a respectable threat and a retreat from would-be predators.
It is. And what they want to do, Harris, what they want to do is they want them to vote in our elections. We've seen municipalities and towns around the country want to have illegal immigrants vote in elections. Also, what many people don't know is that when they're doing the census every 2 years, they base congressional districts based off of population, including the population of illegal immigrants. And we don't ask that question or filter for illegal immigrants when we are drawing lines for congressional districts. And they do, I believe, want to change the face of our country by importing all of these illegal immigrants vis-a-vis our southern border.
So I was going to allude to this earlier. I'm trying to get my mind around what the president is trying to do. But did we lose her again? Okay. Are you with me? Yeah. All right. We've tried. If we can, we'll bring her back in the program, but we're going to move forward now.
The filibuster would be gone. D.C. and Puerto Rico would become states. They'd pack the court with 5 to 10 additional Supreme Court justices, and our country would be gone. And that's the attitude we have to have going into the next 8 months to save our country. This isn't just a normal election. Let's face it. If we give 4 more years of Joe Biden or the destructive Democrats, I don't know how much longer we can hold on. I'm here in southern Arizona. I've been campaigning across southern Arizona the last several days. And I'll tell you what, the people are with us. They are with President Trump. They're with America First policies.
Now, is it possible that Nancy Mace went on television this weekend and screamed rape?
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Yesterday, ABC's George Stephanopoulos tried it with Nancy Mace, an actual rape victim who testified about her abuse. Watch.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me.
Oh, yes, you are going to sit there. Clearly, you are going to sit there so that you can berate George Stephanopoulos and get your kick-ass clip that you're going to carry around to all the shows. Just like you did.
I'm not a doctor, but they're giving him something. All of a sudden, this guy is like amped. On speed or something.
Nobody has ever needed to say, I'm not a doctor, less than Jesse Waters.
Have you ever witnessed this before? A woman shares with you that she's been raped, and you respond with, well, what about Trump? Not, I'm sorry to hear that. That must have been so difficult, but you're a hypocrite. We asked ABC News about George's behavior, and they said that George was just, quote, asking meaningful questions that are relevant to our viewers. I wonder if George's work for Bill Clinton is relevant to their viewers because their anchor has a history of demeaning sexual abuse survivors and accusers.
Let's go to the videotape.
About another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting.
Oh, they talked about how she had a future in the party. She's the next generation. She went to the Citadel, you know. Crazy ass bitch ended her future.
With the help of Carville and Hillary, they smeared everyone.
And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape.
No. The reality is, she can sit in that seat for the rest of her life. And she probably will, because she'll never get elected to anything else again.
Well, what is names, address? I can send you a fax with names, addresses, phone numbers of who you had an affair with. It wouldn't make it true. It is completely bullshit. If you went on the radio and said that Bill Clinton is the father of an illegitimate black child, you would be laughed at. People would think you're crazy. I guarantee you that if you do this, you'll never work in Democratic politics again. Maybe you don't want to. I'm not saying it matters. You will be embarrassed before the National Press Corps. People will think, nobody will believe you, and people will think you're scummy.
When they joke about it,
Doesn't it make it
it's
harder
not
for
okay.
women to come forward when they
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. And I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you
are.
at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
The reality is this bitch is just using her own rape to avoid answering the question as to why she supports Donald Trump. It's a legitimate question. You're in fucking Congress. And you endorsed him.
Stephanopoulos is a Democrat knife fighter. He's there to win elections, not cover the news.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
They are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a civil court. It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you
but
about
as
the man
a rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think
again,
it's
and
offensive.
No, he did not, bitch. You brought that shit up.
How could George associate himself with men accused of rape? No one asks George this because you're not allowed to. But you're allowed to ask Republicans anything, even Republican rape victims on live TV. This is the new strategy, the shame game. And the same shisty, cynical operatives that slandered Clinton victims are back to victim shaming to keep another president in power. Kayleigh McEnany's the former White House press secretary and co-host of Outnumbered. I don't know if this is going to go over the way that Stephanopoulos thinks it is, Kayleigh.
No, he looked horrible in this, but here's what I think is important. I think that this interview needs to be deconstructed because it should be a case study for what the Trump campaign, Republicans, conservatives are up against for the next 8 months. When you look at this interview, he took something that was not newsworthy. The news of the week was State of the Union, Super Tuesday, Biden and Trump having rallies in Georgia. He ignored all of that. And remember, he's on the Sunday shows. He's supposed to cover the news. And instead, he talked about Trump posting bond and E. Jean Carroll. Even though the verdict was found weeks and weeks ago, it was not a newsworthy segment. However, he spent 5 minutes and 50 seconds grilling Nancy Mace on this, bringing up rape.
No, he did not, bitch.
Sunday show. That is what Republicans are up against.
It is a targeting of man as the enemy. It is a teaching of women that they've been oppressed. It's a chip on the shoulder attitude. And they wake up in the morning thinking the cards are stacked against them. Now, I don't think you get ahead in this world by projecting your problems onto society and saying that it's society's fault. Everybody has problems, but the positive person who seeks fulfillment and gets it is one who sets about to solve her own problems in her own way.
As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are trying to shame a rape victim. I find it disgusting.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do
January 6th, Biden calls it July 6th. It's just the same thing. Kayleigh, Mace gave it back. Do you think that has scared Stephanopoulos off from trying this shame game going forward?
Yes.
I mean, he's going to do this with
Nancy
all
Mace.
Republican women going forward.
And every Republican woman should study what Nancy Mace did. She did not give an inch. She did not back down. She didn't stay on defense. No, she went on offense and went right for the jugular with him. And what did Stephanopoulos look like? He looked like a scared fourth grade boy that had forgotten to study for the test and showed up and was scrambling for something to say. In fact, he kept saying the same thing over and over again. It was so rote that at points during that 5 minute and 50 seconds, I thought I had accidentally rewound the segment on YouTube. But no, it was just him saying the same thing. So every person who decides to go out on a Sunday show, study what Nancy Mace did, find your offense talking point, and prosecute the case.
But George Stephanopoulos never said anything about her rape. She fucking brought that up. Now, I'm real sorry that she was raped. But what the fuck does that have to do with her endorsement? What the fuck does that have to do with her being in Congress? What the fuck does that have to do with George Stephanopoulos' question? It's a shitty question to have to answer. Why do you support this fucking guy? She better come up with a better answer than that.
Biden might be behind Trump in a recent poll by 4 points, but when you change his name to Jacked Up Joe, he's up 45.
Because that's what we need to do heading into November.
Yeah, and just study what Kaylee does on Outnumbered. That'll prepare you very well as well.
I mean, you keep saying I'm shaming you. There's
You
nothing
are. The question, it is.
How is the question asking you about a presidential candidate who's
You're
been
asking a rape victim.
And there's no question about that. And
You're
you've
questioning my
courageously
political
talked
choices
about
because
that.
I've been raped. I think that's disgusting.
No, I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting
shaming me. You're trying
someone
to
who's been
shame
found
me.
liable for rape. Actually, I'm not trying to
You
shame
are. That's exactly
You're not
what
answering
you're
the
doing.
question.
I think it's disgusting.
You can keep saying it as much as you want. It doesn't take away from the fact. Nobody gives a damn if you're offended. You can be offended all you want. What was it Kelly McEnany said?
Study what Nancy Mace did, find your offense talking point, and prosecute the case.
That's all this is. That's all anything they ever do is. It's performative. It's a beautiful tapestry. Really. These people are nuts. And there's so many of them. Now I have a theory that they all worship Phyllis Schlively. Don't know who that bitch was? She was a fucking nut.
The fundamental difference between those who are for ERA and those who are against it. You think my daughter should serve. I think women should have the choice not to serve.
Momentum behind the amendment slowed, with only a few states left to ratify.
There was a great furor in many states. People who were very worried about it. Oh, if you pass that, we'd have to have same-sex bathrooms in schools and public places.
It was a threat to a lot of people and to a lot of women. They thought, well, then my husband won't open a door for me.
I had initially thought it probably would pass without a big fuss, but it became a big fuss.
Okay. I want to ask you about, you have endorsed President Trump. You did that back in December. A lot of folks think the GOP put you out there this week because they need to connect with suburban women. It's a place where he's lacking and where they've had trouble. CBS has new polling out. Their analysis says this: the issues of abortion and the state of democracy help boost Mr. Biden with women over Trump. Women who see these issues as major factors in their vote are backing him by more than 2-1. 6 in 10 women think overturning Roe v. Wade was bad for the country. Nearly 9 in 10 favor IVF being legal. So what do you say to those who say they, great that you were out there giving this speech, but they don't think Republicans in their daily policy decisions actually care about women and their lives?
I think the exact opposite is true, and that is exactly why I was sitting at a kitchen table. Republicans care about kitchen table issues. We care about faith, family. We care about freedom.
Each woman faces it single-handed. She must know how to cook, no food. She must know how to set her table attractively. She must know how to make her home comfortable and inviting. She must know the worth of labor-saving devices and how best to conserve her time and energy.
Good idea.
She embarrassed herself, she embarrassed the Republicans, and she embarrassed women. It was a disgrace. I was horrified by her performance, and I really think that it's going to take her years to rebound.
Bad idea.
Mr. President, enough is enough. Innocent Americans are dying, and you only have yourself to blame.
Katie Britt certainly does. What the fuck was this? That bitch Cra. Performative. That doesn't even begin to express what the fuck she did. Once again, that bitch was on the rise, and now it's over.
Safe streets and a strong defense are actually the cornerstones of a great nation.
Kind of melodramatic, wasn't it? A bit embarrassing. Doesn't really come as a surprise that Mitch McConnell handpicked that senator, and she delivered a response that reflected so poorly with the party. And why can't every single Republican learn those days are over?
I don't know what the F I saw. I agree with the people saying she looked like she was auditioning for a show on Lifetime. The drama, the fake affectation, the over-the-top portrayal of emotions I did not believe she was feeling at all.
It is an anti-family movement. I think they target men as the enemy. They teach that women have been kept in a condition of oppression and serfdom for all these years, and that society owes it to them to take care of their children and to find them jobs at the expense of more qualified men or whatever.
Her inauthenticity, it was totally cringe, as the kids would say. Sorry, this is how I saw it.
And on Real America's Voice, the right-wing hosts were stunned into silence.
May God bless you, and may God continue to bless these United States of America.
I'm sure she's
I'm a fan of her.
I'm sure she's very nice, and I don't want to get like over the top here, but that is everything about that on a night like tonight is wrong.
She must know clothes, how to buy, and how to make them.
What we have to do, Howie, is concentrate less on how many weeks and what the law is, because we're going to have 50 different laws around the country.
Right.
And we need to focus on giving women more options so that they can make a better, more healthy choice, and we can see them realize the beauty of becoming a mother.
Right. We are unfortunately out of
time. They offer one choice.
So let me.
Carrie Lake wants to be VP so bad, it's never gonna happen. Her best job was when she was sitting at the anchor desk and reading somebody else's copy.
It's open borders with Joe Biden. It's dangerous streets. It's an economy that's in free fall. It's World War III with Joe Biden, and just the opposite: secure borders, safe streets, great education for our kids, and world peace with President Trump.
Now, obviously,
it was must-scream TV. The president yelling at Americans for over an hour during one of the most hyper-partisan State of the Unions. President Biden's lack of leadership was on full display in a speech designed to please his base of MSNBC flunkies and not the American people. Joe unleashing a fire hose of lies about the economy, inflation, and taxes, and still we don't know what his vision for a second term is. But we do know who he passionately hates: Donald Trump.
My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." Predecessor. My predecessor. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans.
Now, if Trump could have it all, he'd have Jeanine Pirro. Because this bitch would do whatever the hell he wants.
Americans' biggest issue, of course, with Biden is that he's not mentally fit for the job. But the big guy tried to brush off those concerns by joking about it.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation.
America saw, let's say, a very different Joe Biden. I might call him Jacked Up Joe. Jacked Up Joe screaming lie after lie. Jacked Up Joe perhaps overcompensated. Now, the difference between Jacked Up Joe tonight and his recent public appearances, very angry, very jacked up, you might say. This angry, jacked up Joe Biden. What was your reaction to jacked up, angry, bitterly partisan Joe Biden tonight? Jacked up Joe Biden's State of the Union address is in the books. Let's get your overall reaction to Jacked Up Joe.
When the Biden team heard Hannity say the words Jacked Up Joe that many times, I bet they said, thank you for the kick-ass new nickname. So let me ask you, who you think is more likely to be on mind-altering drugs? A president who gives a perfectly normal State of the Union address, or a member of Congress who shows up to an official work event dressed like this?
If Kelly McEnany wasn't married, Trump would be all over that shit. But he likes her where she is.
We really should get to almost a kind of spiritual approach to this thing, or a feeling approach to it. You really feel that the man should be the boss in the home, that there is such a thing as chivalry and all that sort of thing, don't you? All those old values that so many people today say are passé, you believe in, do you not?
Well, as I look around the country, I see that all the successful organizations function with one head. We have one head of General Motors and the banks and the United States. We don't have a president and a co-president. We have a president and a vice president. And all the successful organizations that I know have one final source of responsibility. And I think it's the same way with a marriage. Now, you can divide up the jurisdiction. One can take care of one area and one another. But if you're going to get along in a family unit, you've got to make some social compromises, and you have to have one ultimate source of authority.
In fact, I hardly ever cooperate with politicians because it seems to me that they only want an image. I think she should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
According to a new poll, 35% of Americans did not read anything about President Biden's State of the Union address. In their defense, they haven't finished reading Marjorie Taylor Greene yet.
That I think is so often left out of Donald Trump's story is the patriotism and the love of country that he brought back. We haven't seen that in this president. In fact, we've seen the total opposite. We see people who believe in America again, who see the strength of our country. We brought back American manufacturing. We secured our border. We had a strong economy.
Arkansas's governor goes on to say that under Trump, our enemies feared us while having our allies respect the United States.
One good thing about Sarah Huckabee is the bitch knows her place. And with that smoky eye that she made out of burnt up lies, she plays that role perfectly too. But that bitch cray, just like all the others.
In a world where qualifications are often measured by titles and years of experience, we are reminded of a powerful truth. God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Laura Trump is the embodiment of this truth.
Daughter-in-law and plastic surgery who's had some woman done, Laura Trump.
Right now, we have the first ever election integrity division at the RNC. If you want to volunteer as a poll watcher, poll worker, or a volunteer lawyer, because we want those as well.
Trump and his goons have no incentive to moderate themselves. The opposite is happening. They're becoming more emboldened. They're explicitly promising to jail their opponents, get revenge on their critics, and use executive powers to stamp out protests and carry out mass deportations.
Did you know that Laura Ingraham and Donald Trump dated? That bitch has had his cock in her mouth. That's probably how she got the job on Fox News. I'm not going to suggest who she sucked, but I mean,
Starting with ending the GOP minority outreach program. So sad. They were just about to identify a minority to reach out to.
Megyn Kelly, well, we know who she sucked. They made a movie about it. A couple of them, in fact.
Pro-family and pro-women's rights and pro-local self-government instead of the federal government taking over. Now, there are two sides to the coin. And we think that, for example, that ERA is a massive shift of power from the states to the federal government. It's true you're anti-federal government taking more power, but you're also pro-local and state self-government.
But isn't it true that you're generally portrayed as an againer?
Well...
Isn't that the problem with conservatives? That they may be in their hearts and in their substance pro this and pro that, but they are portrayed as againers?
Well, what's the matter with being against sin? Now, 7 of the 10 commandments are negative.
She must face death to bring children into the world. She must raise them, care for them, and pilot them safely to the threshold of manhood and womanhood.
Addressing the issue of abortion when he said, "We're about to find out how much political power women have." Then he turned to Kamala and said, "Except you."
Look for a national confirmation of this sacred right to life. We see it in Reagan's proclamation, and we see it in the platform of the Republican Party. That is important to you, whether you are a Republican or unborn baby, and that it has the fundamental individual right to life which cannot be infringed. You must be aware of the tremendous campaign that is being carried on to eliminate this pro-life plague. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from several sources. One is from the feminists.
So we are talking about the issues that women care about. I am proud to be pro-life and want to make sure that we have an opportunity to protect life. And that was why I was so proud of the Alabama legislature.
Girl, don't.
Radical feminists who look upon the right to kill the unborn baby as the premier woman's right. And I urge you, every time you see somebody on television talking about women's rights, that you think to yourself, is this a person who thinks the premier woman's right is the right to kill her unborn baby?
It was reported that 92-year-old Rupert Murdoch is set to marry his 67-year-old girlfriend. The couple is registered at Campbell's Funeral Home.
In fact, their whole philosophy of government is saying what government cannot do. And that's the way you keep freedom. Is putting the shackles on government in order to keep them from doing things to you that you don't want them to do to you.
To her husband, she must be a companion, a sweetheart, a wife, and a mother. She must stir his ambition, pull him through failure, and keep success from hurting him.
Look at what's happened to New York and Chicago. You look at what's happened to Los Angeles. We have a much different country in many ways, but also from a voting standpoint. They can't go to hospitals. They can't go to schools. They can't use their playgrounds for their kids.
New York City's homicide rate is 4.8 per 100,000 people. Alabama's homicide rate is 15.9 per 100,000. More than 3 times that in New York City, but you never hear Joe Biden all over Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa, you been there? It's a hellhole, folks, and I'm not kidding around here. There's a crimson tide, all right, from all the murders, no joke.
We're going to make a heavy play for New York. We're going to make a heavy play for Virginia, states that generally don't go Republican. I think they're going to go Republican.
First of all, you think you can win New York in a presidential election? You couldn't even win a mayoral election. And remember, this guy did, so...
Talk to you about your future. Former President Trump, in his interview with me, said he, quote, likes the concept of picking a woman as his vice president. If called upon, would you serve as his vice president?
Well, I, of course, would be honored to serve in any capacity in a Trump administration. I'm proud to be the first member of Congress to endorse his re-election. I'm proud to be a strong supporter of President Trump, and he's going to win this November.
Have you spoken to the former president about the possibility of running as his VP pick?
I'm not going to get into the content of my conversation with President Trump. I talk to him frequently. We've been focused on winning. There's so much work to do as the House Republican Conference Chair, as the representative for New York's 21st Congressional District, and we need to make sure that President Trump is in the strongest position to win in the general election. That's what I've been focused on, and that's what I'm going to remain focused on.
Just to put a very fine point on it, it sounds like you're saying if he were to ask you, the answer would be yes?
Well, I've said for a year now I'd be honored to serve in the next Trump administration.
Oh, Elise Stefanik. This bitch is not crazy. But she plays a crazy person on TV.
Hate all politicians, but especially Trump. On the New York ballot in November, Biden will be listed as friggin' Joe Biden, and Trump will just be listed as this. guy.
What about 2024? What about 2024?
We will see if this is a legal and valid election. What we're seeing so far is that Democrats are so desperate, they're trying to remove President Trump from the ballot. That is a suppression of the American people, and the Supreme Court is taking that case up in February. That should be a 9-0 to allow President Trump to appear on the ballot, because that's the American people's decision to make this November.
And the matter is, of course, halted pending that appeal, as you say. But just to be very clear, I don't hear you committed to certifying the election results. Will you only commit to certify the results if former President Trump wins? Does that mean if former President Trump wins?
No, it means if they are constitutional. What we saw in 2020 was unconstitutional circumventing of the Constitution.
So, at least Stefanik might have a fucking
Will you
shot
vote to certify the results of the 2024 election, no matter what they show?
Well, I voted not to certify the state of Pennsylvania because, as we saw in Pennsylvania and other states across the country, that there was unconstitutional acts circumventing the state legislature and unilaterally changing election law.
But let's be realistic. She's not good looking enough. Donald Trump lacks him sexy.
When are these people going to learn? No matter what you say about Trump, he will never repay your kindness or loyalty. If you held the elevator door open for Trump, he'd press every button, loudly fart, and then say, "Enjoy the ride, loser."
Which, of course, brings us to Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, this bitch has no integrity whatsoever. Hell, she used to be a Democrat, and a good one. But she lost her election. So, she sold her soul to the devil. And her career is over unless Donald Trump resurrects it. But she's not crazy enough. And she doesn't suck a cock the way Kristi Noem does. Just ask Corey Lewandowski.
Well, hi, I'm Kristi Noem. I'm the governor of South Dakota and had the opportunity to come to Smile, Texas to fix my teeth, which has been absolutely amazing. You know, I think that I chose the team here at Smile, Texas because they're the best. When they showed me my beautiful new teeth, I hugged Dr. Davis and thanked him and started to cry just because he really does care about the work that he does.
That's how insane she is. She got Joe Biden to make the Rudy face.
She must make social contact. She must widen her own horizon.
A new report from the Inspector General at the Defense Department says the Trump White House was, quote, awash with speed and prescription drugs. The report says drugs, including the sleep medication Ambien and the anti-sleep med Provigil, were given out without identifying who was receiving them. In a new Rolling Stone article on the DoD report, a former staffer told the publication the anti-anxiety drug Xanax was also handed out, although it was not mentioned in the IG's report.
We're a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat. We have become a nation like nobody thought possible. By far the most disgraceful part of Joe Biden's service is the divisive and angry speech. But so angry. All compliments of an incompetent Biden administration.
Kristi Noem actually offered him a mountain so they could carve his fucking face in it. Kristi Noem is gonna be the nominee. Kristi Noem is a crazy fucking bitch. And Kristi Noem is fucking on board.
Good idea.
House chamber, navigating through our divided Congress and barely getting past the bridge troll who guards the podium.
Bad idea.
Marjorie Taylor Greene seen here dressed for a shift at TGI Crazies.
What do you think the message should be to Nikki Haley tonight?
Well, we've been encouraging her to drop out and support President Trump, and I think tonight is the clear message that President Trump is the clear front runner. He's the winner in our Republican primary, and it's time for Nikki Haley to drop out and support him.
Can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself? He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Mwah! My God, you're a gem. You're a gem amongst gravel. You're the gift that keeps on giving.
That even after being told to F off by a raving lunatic, they still say, thank you very much. I'd love to see that reporter on the subway. The CIA is using mind control rats to spy on us. That's a fascinating insight. And may I say, I love your aluminium hat.
Tell us about Jewish space.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you off?
So here's the headline. It's kind of, can't mistake it. Trump's White House was awash in speed and Xanax. The Pentagon included a document that showed basically an order form for medications that were ordered by the White House Medical Unit that it was doling out, and it was stuff like fentanyl and ketamine, also morphine and Ambien, and a lot of an upper called Provigil.
I'm starting to think Trump's always raging against the cartels because he considers them the competition. We have to stop fentanyl from crossing our borders because it's bringing down the price of our White House fentanyl.
And find time for culture.
And MTG is just homely enough that you know she can suck a cock. Hell, she made a movie about it.
Whenever British reporters have to deal with wackos here in the U.S., they always maintain the poise of a narrator in a BBC nature documentary. We're here in one of the most dangerous parts of the jungle, a Trump rally, where we're hoping to get a glimpse of the rare American nutbird.
They played a clip and then suggested that George Stephanopoulos is the one that said, as a rape victim, what do you think about Donald Trump? That's not what fucking happened.
Well, you're welcome to say that, but you have to answer the question. Why are you supporting someone who's been found liable for rape?
I just answered your question.
What is the answer?
He was not found guilty in a criminal court of law. It was sexual abuse. It wasn't actually rape. By the way,
by my count, she said judge 5 times. She said, I take offense 9 times. And of course, that he's shaming her. She said that shit 10 times. You know, offensive talking points.
And E. Jean Carroll joked about all the money she's going to get and made a mockery out of this case. And I think that's offensive. There's a reason why women don't come forward. And when you have someone who says that they're raped and they make a mockery out of this civil court judgment, it's offensive to other women. It makes it harder for other women to come forward when another woman has made a mockery of it.
You said women don't come forward because they are afraid. They are afraid because they're defamed
and shamed,
by those
like
who
you're trying to shame me this morning.
Oh no. Did that go to 11? Oh, I think that one went to 11.
They are afraid to come forward, as you said, because they are defamed by those who commit the rape. That's what Donald Trump has been found guilty of doing.
He defended himself over that and denies that it ever happened, but he was not found guilty in a criminal court of law.
It was a jury in a civil court, bitch. What the fuck?
It was a civil judgment.
So is that the distinction you're making? A civil judgment is okay, but a criminal judgment is not?
This is different, and they didn't even input all of the evidence into the civil case either, because some of the information she provided wasn't even accurate or correct.
Their agenda for America. It was abortion on demand, paid for by the taxpayers. It was the whole gay and lesbian agenda. It was the Equal Rights Amendment. It was the government taking care of all children and affirmative action for women and women in combat. Well, this same crew is now over in Beijing trying to sell their ideology and agenda to the whole world. They're not going to do it, are they? No. Great.
One of our favorites.
Jesus Christ.
Just remember, they always want us to pay for it, too.
For all we know, they were sprinkling Adderall in their coffee and calling it
Jacked Up Joe.
After all that, I had to smoke a cigarette. Damn. These bitches are crazy. And everybody knows the crazy bitches are always the best ones in bed.
Good idea.
Did sign a pledge, an RNC pledge, to support the eventual nominee. Do you still feel bound by that pledge?
I have always said that I have serious concerns about Donald Trump. I have even more concerns about Joe Biden.
So is that a no? You're no
Trump's
longer bound
daughter-in-law.
by that pledge?
No,
Bad idea.
I think I'll make what decision I want to make, but that's not something I'm thinking about.
election you were just in is not something you're thinking about right now? See, this is why you lost. Your lies are boring. At least Trump's lies have some art to them.
Not many people know this, but at night I grow wings and I fly over the city.
In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us. It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that.
Haley got trounced last night in record-setting fashion, despite the fact that Democrats, for reasons unknown, are allowed to vote in Vermont and various other Republican primaries. Much of her money came from radical left Democrats, as did many of her voters, almost 50% according to the polls.
I wish Donald Trump well, and I wish Nikki Haley would fall down a well.
And if you still don't know who's gonna be the VP, ask Corey Lewandowski. I'm Zachariah, Lone Star Liberal. Y'all take it easy.
After disavowing him and blaming him for the insurrection at the Capitol, Republicans have once again slinked back to Donald Trump, and now they're going to spend the next 8 months making promises and asking us for our votes. And to that I say,
why don't you? We're now talking about Joe Biden as too fiery, right? As too aggressive. And yesterday we were talking about Joe Biden can't find his pants. Joe Biden has dementia. Joe Biden is too old for this job. And that's how I know that it went really well, because the Republicans who have been on TV, the congressmen, senators, et cetera, people who would use the age attack are now basically saying he's an aggressive partisan who's maybe the Coke was his, maybe it's just Adderall.
That was my
right?
joke.
Well, you didn't tell me in the green room.
No, that's
we're
what I
like
said.
the same.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And you also know that it went well because last night Joe Biden's campaign smashed 3 fundraising records at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, and at 11 o'clock.